What would you say if a cop walked up to you tonight and said, "We just want to talk"? If you answer the wrong way, you can hand over your rights in seconds. And once you start talking, you can make their job easy and your life hard. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could protect you in a real stop when your heart is pounding and your mind goes blank. And tap like so you can find this again before you ever need it. When an officer says, "We just want to talk," it sounds harmless. It sounds casual. It sounds like you should relax and explain yourself. That is exactly why it works on so many people. Most people have no idea that a friendly line can turn into a fishing trip for answers, consent, and little statements that get twisted later. In this video, you're going to learn the exact words that keep you from volunteering your own problems. You're going to learn when you should leave, when you should stay quiet, when you should refuse a search, and how to stay calm without sounding rude. Let me show you exactly how smart people handle this. You do not need to argue. You do not need to act tough. You just need a few clean sentences that protect you and your future. The danger starts because you think talking will clear things up. You think if you're polite enough, open enough, or helpful enough, the officer will see you're a good person and send you home. Sometimes that happens. A lot of times it does not. Here's the reality. The officer already knows more than you think, and you know less than they do. You do not know what they suspect. You do not know who said what. You do not know what they recorded. So when you start filling silence with words, you give them pieces to sort, test, and use. A simple yes becomes a timeline. A simple no becomes something they compare later. Even your joke can sound like guilt on paper. That is why your goal is not to win the conversation. Your goal is to protect yourself while staying calm and respectful. The first thing you need to do is find out whether you are free to go. This is where almost everything changes. If you are not detained, you can leave. If you are detained, then you stop trying to explain and start protecting yourself. Here's exactly what you say. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Word for word. Memorize that line. Say it in a calm voice, not angry, not sarcastic, just clear. Why does this work so well for you? Because it forces the moment into one of two lanes. Either the officer says you are free to leave, or the officer makes clear that you are being held. That matters because a lot of police talk lives in the gray zone. You feel pressure, but nothing is fully stated. You think you have to stay, so you stay. You think you have to answer, so you answer. This question cuts through that fog. It makes the officer choose. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In plain English, the courts have said the real question is whether a normal person would feel free to end the encounter or say no. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, what do you need?" Then the chat gets longer, the questions get sharper, and the officer keeps collecting details. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to show their hand, and you stop guessing. Watch what happens when you do not ask this. You stand there trying to be nice. The officer asks where you're coming from. You answer. They ask where you're headed. You answer. They ask why your story sounds off. Now you explain more. 5 minutes later, you are in a hole you dug with your own mouth, and the crazy part is you may have never been required to stay in the first place. Now watch what happens when you use the line. If the officer says you are free to leave, you leave, calmly. No speech, no victory lap, no extra words. If the officer says you are detained, that gives you useful information. Now you know this is not a casual talk. Now you know it is time for your next protection. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you were trying to learn your status, not pick a fight. There is another reason this helps you. It keeps you from sounding nervous and random. People who panic start blurting out facts that were never asked for. They start giving permission they never had to give. They start trying to read the officer's mind. This single question slows everything down. It helps your brain catch up. It helps you act on purpose instead of fear. And yes, you can say it politely. "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave?" That is clean, that is respectful, that is powerful. This is 100% legal. You are not resisting. You are not obstructing. You are asking a basic question about your freedom. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the tone fast. It tells them, you know the difference between a chat and a detention. Have you ever been in a moment where you didn't know if you could leave? Drop a comment below, because that confusion is exactly where people give away their rights. If the officer says you are being detained, your next move is not to argue. Your next move is to shut the talking down the right way. Here's exactly what you say. "I am invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer." Those exact words. Keep them together. Do not split them up. Do not soften them. Do not turn them into a question. This part matters because silence by itself is not always enough to protect you. A lot of people think they can just stare at the dashboard, shrug, or say nothing for a while. That feels safe. But courts have made this tricky. In Berghuis versus Tompkins, the rule was simple and harsh. If you want to use your right to remain silent, you need to say so clearly. Just sitting there quietly is not the same as clearly invoking your right. That is why your words matter so much. Let me show you exactly why this sentence is better than hoping the officer gets the hint. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I didn't do anything," or "Why are you asking me that?" Then they keep talking, deny things badly, and hand over statements that can be picked apart later. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer." Then the record shows you clearly tried to stop the questioning. Here's the reality. Once you start explaining, you are trapped by your own memory. You forget times, you mix up names, you guess at details. The officer does not need you to confess. They just need you to be inconsistent. Maybe you say you left at 9, then later say 8:30. Maybe you say you were alone, then mention your friend was in the car earlier. None of that proves guilt by itself. But it gives them something to attack. It gives prosecutors something to frame. It gives jurors something to wonder about. When you use the right sentence, you stop feeding that machine. You are not being rude. You are not being sneaky. You are protecting yourself from pressure, confusion, and misunderstanding. Miranda versus Arizona is the famous case everyone knows, but people miss the real lesson. The right is powerful only when you actually use it. If you keep talking after the warning, you make your own problem worse. And do not say this line and then keep chatting. That defeats the whole point for you. If you say you want silence and a lawyer, then stop. No extra stories, no nervous laughs, no "but just so you know" speech, no trying to fix the mood. Listen closely because this is critical. Your protection is strongest when your words are clear and your silence matches your words. You may be thinking, what if I am innocent? Then shouldn't I explain? No. Innocent people talk themselves into charges every day. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because the system is built on evidence, not on your ability to freestyle under stress. If the facts help you, your lawyer can use them later. If you spill them in a bad moment, you cannot take them back. And yes, asking for a lawyer does not make you look guilty. People say that all the time, but that fear is exactly what gets them hurt. Wanting legal help is normal. Wanting to stop talking under pressure is normal. This is 100% legal. You do not get bonus points for being easy to question. Now let's talk about the third sentence because this is where friendly talk often turns into a search. Here's exactly what you say. I do not consent to any searches. Say it clean. Say it once. If they ask again, repeat it. I do not consent to any searches. That line protects you even if they search anyway. This matters because officers often ask in a relaxed tone. Can I take a look? Mind if I check your car? You don't have anything illegal, right? If you've got nothing to hide, we'll be quick. That sounds small. It sounds harmless. But consent is huge. If you say yes, you can wipe out a lot of your future arguments about whether the search was okay. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. You do not need to help them search you. You do not need to make their job easier. You can refuse consent and still stay polite. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." Then the officer searches deeper, finds something unexpected, or claims something looked suspicious. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I do not consent to any searches." Then you preserve your rights, and your lawyer has more room to fight later. This matters even when you think there is nothing in your car, your bag, or your phone. Maybe your friend left something behind. Maybe a legal item gets misunderstood. Maybe the officer says they smelled something. Maybe they move things around and create a story you never saw coming. Consent takes a maybe and turns it into your own permission. Do not give that away. And if the officer searches anyway, do not physically stop them. That is not your move. Your move is verbal, not physical. You say the sentence, you make your position clear, then you stay calm. That way, if the search gets challenged later, the record shows you did not agree. That can matter a lot for you down the road. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and one pattern shows up again and again. The moment a person says yes, the whole case gets harder to fight. The moment they calmly refuse, the legal picture changes. This also connects to traffic stops. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed just to chase unrelated stuff without a real reason. That means the stop is supposed to be about the mission of the stop. Your license, your registration, the ticket or warning, safety steps tied to that stop, not a free bonus investigation forever. So if the officer is done with the traffic stuff and starts drifting into extra digging, your refusal matters even more. Watch what happens when people confuse being polite with being powerless. They think they have to say yes to prove they are innocent. They think a refusal will make things worse. But your rights are not there only for guilty people. Your rights are there for you on your worst day, your most nervous day, and your most misunderstood day. 90% of drivers don't know what's coming next. Stay with me because this next tactic is what keeps you calm when the pressure gets personal. The fourth tactic is simple, but it saves people from turning a stop into a speech. Here's exactly what you say. I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not answer questions. That line is gold for you because it separates your body from your mouth. You can comply without cooperating in a way that gives up your rights. A lot of people think they only have two choices: be fully obedient and chatty, or be defiant and hostile. That is false. You can do what you are legally required to do and still stop giving them free information. Maybe you hand over your license. Maybe you step out of the car if ordered. Maybe you keep your hands visible. But you do not need to keep narrating your life. You do not need to explain where you were, who you were with, why you're nervous, why there is cash in your wallet, or why your friend called twice. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm happy to answer anything, officer." Then the officer keeps walking them into new topics, new guesses, and new problems. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not answer questions." Then you stay calm, the stop stays tighter, and you give away much less. This line also helps your tone. You are not saying no to everything. You are not refusing every direction. You are showing you understand the difference between orders and questions. That is huge for you. It keeps things clear. It lowers the chance that your refusal sounds like resistance. And it protects you from the pressure trick where the officer keeps stacking question after question until you crack and start oversharing. People forget how stress works on your brain. Your mouth gets ahead of your judgment. You answer one thing, then another, then another. Soon you are talking just to fill silence. That is when mistakes happen. This line gives you a script. Scripts are powerful because you do not have to invent words under pressure. You just repeat the same safe idea. And if you're wondering whether this sounds too formal, good. Formal is better for you than sloppy. Formal keeps the moment clean. Formal protects the record. Formal shows you are not confused. Former police officers have confirmed this works because clear people are harder to manipulate into careless statements. Now let's tie all of this to the bigger legal picture so you understand why these lines matter so much for you. Miranda versus Arizona says if police want to question you while you are in custody, they must warn you that you can stay silent and ask for a lawyer. In plain English, the system knows pressure makes people talk. Berghuis versus Tompkins adds the part people miss. In plain English, if you want to use that silence right, say it clearly. Do not assume your quiet face does the job for you. Rodriguez versus United States says a traffic stop cannot be dragged out longer than needed for the stop's real mission unless police have extra legal reason. In plain English, they do not get endless bonus time to poke around your life. And Florida versus Bostick says the real question is whether a normal person would feel free to say no or end the encounter. In plain English, you can ask if you are free to leave, and that question matters. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. These cases connect like puzzle pieces. First, learn your status. Second, clearly invoke silence and counsel if needed. Third, refuse consent to searches. Fourth, comply with lawful orders without giving away your voice. Now picture a real stop so you can see how this plays out for you. It is late, you get pulled over for a broken taillight, your hands are shaking a little. The officer takes your license and comes back slower than you expected. Then you hear the line, "Hey, we just want to talk for a second." That is where most people go wrong. The wrong way sounds normal. You laugh a little. You say sure. The officer asks where you're coming from. You answer. Then where you're going. You answer. Then why you seem nervous. You answer that too. Then they ask if there is anything illegal in the car. You say no. Then they ask if they can take a quick look. You say yes because you think saying no looks bad. Now the stop is bigger. Now they are digging. Now every sentence you gave them is something they can compare, question, or twist. The right way is boring. And boring is what protects you. The officer says, "We just want to talk." You say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" If the officer says you are free to go, you leave. If the officer says you are detained, you do not argue. You say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer." If the officer keeps pushing with casual questions, you repeat, "I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not answer questions." If the officer asks to search, you say, "I do not consent to any searches." Then you stop talking. You stay calm. You keep your hands where they should be. You do not get cute. You do not get loud. You do not explain. That difference changes everything for you. In the wrong version, you become the source of evidence. In the right version, you become much harder to use against yourself. That is the whole game. Not winning the roadside debate, not proving you're nice, not hoping the officer likes you, protecting your rights so your future is not decided by a few scared sentences in the dark. Next week, I'm dropping the video on what to say when cops ask to search your phone. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it because that one mistake can expose your whole life in seconds. So remember the 4 moves you now have in your pocket. First, ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? So you know where you stand. Second, if you are detained, say, I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Third, if they want to search, say, I do not consent to any searches. Fourth, if they keep pressing, say, I will comply with lawful orders, but I do not answer questions. You do not need a long speech. You need short lines, a calm voice, and the discipline to stop talking. That is how you protect yourself when a casual chat is anything but casual. Hit subscribe so you catch that phone search video next week. Smash like if this just gave you words you can actually use, and drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.